Hola, bonjour, hello. Welcome to a new episode of Growing with Proficiency, the podcast. So this is a very special episode because the idea of this episode came when I was working with my great friend and also the manager of my Spanish Teacher Academy, Lisa McHargue. So when I was with Lisa one day, we were reviewing one of my resources about Linda Caicedo. So if you don't know, Linda Caicedo is soccer player and she did really great. She is just 18 years old and she did incredible in the last World Cup. And I was going through this and then Lisa started telling me, oh, I would do that in my class and I would do this in my class and I would do, and my mind was blown away with the incredible different options where she would take a simple activity and did it in a way that it was so much more engaging. And I say, Lisa, you need to come and do an episode with me of how we can do comprehensible input easy. So Lisa, thank you so much for accepting my invitation and share a little bit with us about you.
Well, I am so excited to be back on your podcast, Claudia. I was here talking about organization. I don't know when that was, December, I want to say. And I'm really excited because what we're going to talk about is something I'm really passionate about. I was a primarily high school Spanish teacher, but I also taught middle school, and I've taught everything from kindergarten to like college credit high school courses, but primarily high school. And when I started teaching, I thought I had to have like a million different activities to fill the time. And I was so stressed. And then I realized like, oh, if I actually just have like one really solid piece, like this resource we're going to talk about today, there's a lot of different things I can do with it. So I don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. I don't have to make a brand new activity. I can keep it fresh without having to make a million things and keep it really simple. That's what we're going to talk about today.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. So Lisa has a gift, right? I think every human has a gift. And the gift that Lisa has is seeing the things in a much more effective and productive way. So she helps me with that. And that's why I can do my Spanish Teacher Academy, because she has a lot of processes and systems. And I think that is what is really incredible about this conversation. So let's talk about how you can use one simple text with activities that you may have in your textbook, or in these are very common activities that you can find in a resource that you find in TPT, in your textbook, or something that you may have already created and is sitting in your drive and you think, oh my God, this is so boring. Your mind is gonna be blown away with these activities. Okay, Lisa, so we are looking at a resource that I created for the Academy. And it's also a thing in TPT that is Linda Caicedo y el fútbol femenino. So we're talking about soccer and Linda Caicedo. And one of the pre-reading activities is a simple PQA. So there are like 7 questions, personalized questions. And in these questions, what I want to do is I want to preload some of the structures that my students are going to see in the reading, but also connect with the idea with, soccer. And did you play sports when you were a little kid? And there are teams that are for girls or boys in your school or in your community. And it's all those type of personal questions. So Lisa, there's 7 PQAs, personal questions here. What would you do with these just instead of asking the question to the class?
So I think with this and with everything we talk about today, you really have to take into consideration the personality of the specific class that you are working with, okay? So with this, with these PQA, these questions, they're just on a sheet, on a worksheet. Now, if you have a really quiet class that needs a lot of preparation, I might just give them the worksheet and say, hey, go through and circle it. And then maybe they're going to partner up and share that. And then you're going to share out as a class. That's totally fine. That's a great way to do it. Now, I'm looking at some of these and it's like, hey, did you like to practice sports when you were a kid? And Claudia's provided structures like, yes, I liked to, so, no, I didn't like to. if you have the technology available, you could, make this like a live action poll using something like Pear Deck or Go Formative, or I'm sure there's other programs, but those are the ones that come to mind. And you can make this kind of, if you can project it, it can be like a live action poll where kids can see the results going like up and down, things like that, like in real time, which can be kind of fun. Yeah, they'll kind of mess around a little bit, but you can usually then kind of like lock it, like your final answer results are in. And this is really great if you have an introverted class, or you have, kids that are just kind of like gonna go with the flow. It's like when you were a kid and it's like, what's your favorite food? And everybody said pizza, and that wasn't everyone's favorite food, but they didn't want to be different. It can be kind of nice to have it be that way. The other thing you could do is, again, if these are printed on a worksheet, you can just cut that worksheet apart. All right. You're just going to cut it into strips. You can hang those strips around the room. Now, there are 7 questions here. So, what I might do, let's say that I have a class of 21 students, because that's math I can do. I'm going to print out 3 copies of this worksheet. And then I'm going to color and symbol code them. My very first year of teaching, I had a student who was 100% colorblind. They saw no color. The world was black and white to them. So I'd never color coded anything. I would always use shapes. So on each strip of one set 1, I might make a green triangle. The next set is maybe a pink circle. And the next one is maybe a purple rectangle. And I'm going to divide my kids and say, okay, you 7, you're walking around the room and you are looking for the strips of paper that have whatever color triangle I said it was. I think it was green, a green triangle. And so now they're just looking for the papers with green triangles. And you will be amazed. A lot of times they don't even realize that the 3 separate groups are all the same questions.
Mhm.
So they're like really just looking for their green triangles. And they can walk around the room. And now you have the option, you can have them write down like, okay, number 1, I would say, this. And in Claudia's example, there's structures provided. So they might just write, sí, me gustaba. Or you can say, hey, put your initials underneath each one. Or, hey, just make a tally mark under the one you would choose. And then you can kind of walk around the room. And if it was where there were multiple ones, I might gather them up. Or if your kids can handle a lot of movement, you might say, okay, green triangles, you're now looking for the purple circles. And now I want you to go around and look at the answers and kind of record. So the first one, did you practice sports as a kid? What was the majority answer from that group? And so now they're seeing all those words again. And you can also, prep them. Hey, I'm going to have you report back, to the class. And because you could ask each kid, say, hey, Lisa, what symbol were you looking at results for? Oh, I was looking for the purple circle. Okay, great. So on the purple circle, question number 1, what was the majority answer? What did they say? Sí, me gustaba, más o menos, or no me gustaba. Like, yes, I did, so no. You can have them report back and get them to actually just like read it, and you can just get more and more and more instances of input for them.
Oh, I love that. And you know what? 2 things. PQAs are essential. Like they're like this basic strategy when we're trying to do acquisition-driven instruction. Is how we connect, we preload, we repeat, we personalize content. It's so much. But I was in a session for the academy yesterday, and one of the teachers said, my PQA kind of like got out of control. Everybody was answering. I just didn't know. I just got really kind of like frustrated with them because they were so engaged that they were all of them were talking. And then sometimes we just need, like you said, depending on the class, sometimes we just don't need to be in front of the class asking these questions aloud. We may have these great ideas like polling with Go Formative, with Peer Deck, or putting them on the walls of our classes and let students go and tally or write their answers on a Post-it and get the same results at the end, and let them read again and answer again. And these are PQAs, and I know that we all use personalized questions. So if you have your PQAs, here it is. This is how you can do it in a different way, in a novelty, with adding this novelty to your classes. Okay. So
okay, wait, I thought of more for this now too.
Okay, now this is great. This is ongoing, right? Like this is totally live.
Yeah.
This is coming like, okay, now we have one more idea.
Right. So let's say you want to recycle these PQAs because, again, we want to bring back these structures. Maybe the next day that I teach this, I might bring these PQA back. And one of them on here is that, do you like practice a sport? So like, do you practice some kind of sport currently? And the answer is like, yeah, I practice. Sometimes I do. Like, no, I don't do sports. So you could have the students, if you have mini whiteboards, which I did and I loved, you could have them, hey, okay, I want you to write your answer. You can even show them the options. You're not asking them to recall. I want you to write, sí practico, a veces practico, no practico, or whatever it is in your target language, whatever the possible answers are. Okay, great. Now everyone like put the cap on your marker. Okay, hold on to your board. All right, now what I want you to do is for our next activity, or what I want you to do, I want you to make groups of 3 with people that have the same answer as you, or people that don't have the same answer, or find a partner that has a different answer than you, whatever. And now you can use it to make groups, and you can be thoughtful. Do you want opposing opinions? Do you want to put people that are similar, like that all practice sports, together in a group? Or do you want to put some band kids that don't do sports with some kids that do sports? You can be kind of thoughtful with how you do this. So you could bring them back for making groups. The other thing, if you have a group that really likes to talk and they'll stay on task, there's no rule that says you have to be the ringleader introducing this. Some of these structures, like did you like to, te gustaba, maybe they know that, but this is a new context with sports. So maybe you put them in groups of 3. I liked 3, 4, you tended to get 2 pairs. Put them in groups of 3 and project the question and say, hey, I want you to talk about this amongst yourselves. And then, call on groups and say, hey, Claudia, Lisa, and Laura, Claudia, what did you all answer? Did you all like it? And Claudia reports back for the group or something like that. Or you could also kind of have them on slips of paper or like on little cards and say, okay, every group of 3 gets 1 card. Okay, talk about this. All right, maybe you talk about it as a class. Okay, now, one person from your group, stand up, hold the card. That person walks and finds a different group to sit at. So now you're mixing groups, new question. That person's going to repeat that question, I guess. The person with the card, I'd have to think about that. But you can kind of see where I'm going with this. There's a lot of ways you could use these questions. And you'll notice mine work in a lot of movement because I taught 90-minute classes at a 1-to-1 school where every kid had a device. So my kids tended to have spent a lot of time sitting and staring at a computer screen. So I was very much about getting them up and moving. And you're going to see that as we talk throughout this conversation.
And
there you go.
One of the things that a lot of we feel when we're doing acquisition-driven instruction is like a lot is on us in front of the class, asking the question, the teacher in front of the class, delivering the input. And I get that. I truly believe that there is a place for that and it's a need for that. But having the flexibility. Now, one thing that I want you to think if you're listening to this, you may have 4 classes of level 3. You don't need to do the same thing, but you have the same activity. So you still have your 7 questions. In one group, you give them the worksheet with the 7 questions, let them work individually because they work great like that. Perfect. The next one, let them stand up and answer by doing like the post-its or the tagging to answer the questions. Okay, the next group, maybe they're gonna do polling. The next class, maybe they do small groups because they're really strong in Spanish. They're really, really good. That's, you have those classes that are like really, really good and they can have conversation and you say, and I want you to do a follow-up question for this because they're good. Now, the same resource, they're the same 7 questions. So it's really like the conversation here with Lisa is it triggers your creativity on how to use these 7 questions in a different way. Okay, we're going to move to the next one. And the next one is a little bit about questions, open-ended questions. So what can we do when we have, and in this case, we have 5 open-ended questions?
So open-ended questions, it's going to be a lot of stuff that's similar to PQAs, but you have the option to, again, have it on a worksheet, have them write it down. That's totally fine. You might give each student a different question and kind of do like a speed dating thing and have them sort of change partners and walk around. You might project these on a screen. You might project them one at a time and say, hey, write them down on a mini whiteboard. Everyone flip your answer at the same time. Or, hey, write down your answer and now, share it with someone else, compare your 2 answers. And then you can go around and say, hey, did you have similar answers or different answers? And here's the thing about open-ended questions. When you hand students, I'm looking at the worksheet Claudia's done, and there's 5 questions on it. When you hand them a worksheet and say, answer these 5 questions, they answer them, and it's probably not going to take them that long. They're probably not going to put a ton of effort into it. Let's be honest. And you're like, great, that took, maybe a minute. Now what do I do for 90 minutes, And don't get me wrong, some classes need, all they can handle is sitting down and like writing them on a worksheet because, the behavior like can't handle more. But it can be really dry and it goes really fast. And it's like, great, now what? So you can then kind of go around and ask questions, but then it's a lot of kids just sort of sitting and waiting. There's not a lot of novelty to keep them engaged. Whereas if you do this one at a time on a screen and you let them kind of write just on a plain sheet of paper or mini whiteboards, kids love dry erase markers. It is like the best thing ever. The most boring thing will be amazing if you let them write on a mini whiteboard, the whiteboard marker. But you might go one at a time. And now, I was like, the first one here is, let me see which. Also, like, which sports were the most popular? Like when in the past or when you were younger. So maybe now I call on Claudia and say, hey, Claudia, like, what did you say? And she says her answer. And then now I can say, hey, raise your hand if you agree. Or, I can call on someone specific, like, hey, Lisa, like, what did you say? Oh, you had something similar. And then you can even pull in maybe past vocab, like, hey, did you play this? Or did you practice? Were you on the same team? Like, I was from a really small school. Everybody was on the same teams together. But by going one by one, it allows you to do a little bit more. And let's say that they're getting, you can tell you're losing them. Let's see, what else is there? So one of them is, according to students, is practicing sports important? Why? So if you're losing them, you might say, hey, guys, I don't want you to like write your answer with words. Let's say let's say your answer is yes. I want you to draw your why. Or if your answer is no, I want you to draw your why. So maybe I say, no, it's not because academics are more important. Maybe I have to put no, and then I got to like draw a paper with like an F and a sad face and an A+ and a happy face and like really circle that. It now takes answering this question. It changes the state. Now they're drawing and they're still sitting and they're still writing with paper or a marker or whatever. But now they're drawing. Now their brain's having to work in a slightly different way. And you can walk around and maybe I say, hey, Claudia, is it important? See or no? And yes or no. And she says, yes. And I come over and I, say, hey, explain to me why. Again, depending on the level, they can explain in the target language. You can invite a student up. If you know the kids, them be comfortable. Hey, why don't you, or you can even say like, kids do this. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to do this. And then you're going to randomly pull 3 kids to come up to the board and draw their reasons on the board in front of everyone. So everyone can see them. And now they can kind of go through it. I would occasionally walk around the room with my iPad and take pictures that I could then project up. I would take pictures of the kids drawing. So now we've changed the state. And again, it's just open-ended questions, but we've changed the state and then people get to see the drawings and it's kind of fun. And I was the worst drawer in the world. I purposely drew worse than I normally do. Like, guys, no one's a worse artist than I am. Like, the bar is very low for illustrations, all right? But there's a couple of ideas, and you can always have them talk about it out loud, record their partner's answer, or walk around until you find someone that has a similar answer. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff you can do with open-ended questions.
I love it because I think open-ended questions can be intimidating because we don't have the language, the target language to answer because they're open-ended.
Mm-hmm.
However, when you let them do a couple of things that you mentioned, just write it out and share with a partner. And then you can share it with the class because you already wrote it down, you already shared with a partner, now you're ready to share with the class. And the other one is drawing your why. So maybe for, yes or no and why, then you can write sí or no. And then you draw the one, and then you as a teacher can narrate and like, oh, I see that Lisa, of course, Lisa thinks it's not important because she's always so driven in the academics. Oh, and I see that you like biology. Of course, biology is more important than, that soccer. I mean, like, of course. And then you can narrate those answers, but you're still having the students to have and there's the same 5 questions. So one class can just sit down, write it out. One class can share it with a small group. One class can be just write it with a partner. One class can draw it. But it's just the different ways to approach one simple activity like open-ended question. Okay, now these are in my resource. They were pre-reading activities. Now we come to the reading the text. And this is like a huge one because it's like, what can we do with the text? How can we do and make sure that the students are engaging with the text? So Lisa, let's talk about how would you do this reading? What would you have students to do while they read?
Nothing terrifies a novice learner or like an intermediate low more than a page full of text in the target language. They're like, oh my God, I can't read this. It's too overwhelming. So for me, it was those are actual sounds from my classroom. For me, it was very much about breaking it into manageable chunks and telling students, hey, you don't have to read and understand the whole thing. We're going to take this piece by piece. Now, depending on the story, I would do a couple different things. If you've ever used, back in my Spanish teacher life, I was La Maestra MCH. And if you've ever used any of my resources, they get weird, okay? They get really weird. There's one about a family that like washes their face with salsa and they use cats instead of towels because they don't wash the towels. I don't know, it's weird. But what I did with that story is I broke it down into chunks and then I actually formatted it a lot like a comic strip. So if you're looking at the paper, I had a large like blank box and below that a chunk of text, like a very large caption. And I would tell the students, hey, read that and draw what you understand. Not every single detail. And I would tell them, you don't have to get everything. If all you get is there's something about a cat in there, like draw a cat. Okay, great. You understood part of that. I love it. Move on. So I would have them read through and draw what they understand. I did that a lot. And then I would repurpose those. I'd have them cut them apart and make it a matching, make it a put it in order activity. Like I got days out of those kinds of activities. But let's say you have a more traditional, it's a page of text and paragraphs. Okay, we're going to break it down paragraph by paragraph. I want you to, you could do like stoplight reading where it's, highlight in green what you understand, in like yellow, so, and like pink, what do you not know? Break it down like that. You could have them at the end of each paragraph do a little summary. Off in the margins, draw some little like pictures again with what you understand. Some people get really fancy with annotating it. There's symbols you can use. I never liked to go too much with that. I would maybe give them like 1 or 2 to like do. But I would have them break it down. I would always have my students read it on your own first. I'm going to give you this much time. Then I'm going to pair you up with a partner and you're going to compare what you understood. Did you understand the same thing? Can you fill in some blanks? Great. And then we're going to read through it as a class. I'm going to read it aloud because I think it was really important for students to actually hear the language. So I'm going to read, the first paragraph because they're short paragraphs or maybe part of it. I'm going to have it projected I'm going to read, students are going to follow along. And then I'm going to randomly call on someone and say, Claudia, tell me one thing you understood from this paragraph. Not translate the whole thing, not do all of it. And by now, they've done it on their own. They talked to a partner, maybe two partners. Sometimes I'd put them in a partner and I put them together in groups of 4. Be like, hey, just fill in blanks. And yeah, write down what they understood that you didn't,
Absolutely.
So they're set up for success. I'm not going to call on anyone and they're going to be like, I don't know anything from this paragraph, So that's kind of how I would tackle reading a lot of times. And sometimes even with a reading, if it was like a traditional paragraph, kind of like the one I'm looking at, I'd have them read it, do whatever highlight it, write a little summary, whatever. And then I'd say, cut this worksheet apart. I want you to cut each paragraph out. So the one I'm looking at, they would have 4 chunks of paper. All right. And now again, I might just say, hey, on a whiteboard, choose one of the paragraphs and draw something from it. And maybe you're in a group of 4 and the other 3 are going to hold up the paragraph they think it is. Or
I love it.
Take a sheet of lined paper, divide it into 4, draw or summarize in English or whatever you want. And let's say each student does that. And then you can say, okay, guys, we're going to walk around from desk to desk. You're going to go to a desk. You're going to look at the pictures. You're going to look at the pieces of that worksheet they just cut into chunks. And now I want you to match the chunk with the picture. And then, hey, once you're see, and maybe you even have the student who drew on the back of the paper they drew on, they put a key, this is what it was, label paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. Check your answer. Now go to the next one. And what are we doing when we do this? We're making students think about the text. We're making them look, again, for just key phrases. So maybe somebody drew a calendar because it tells me that, her birthday is the 22nd of February, 2005. So maybe they just had febrero. Guess what? They're seeing febrero. Guess what? They're going to have to probably look at cumpleaños. And eventually they're going to be what does cumpleaños mean? Or what does nació mean? You can go around and then again, use those pictures and have them now, hey, I want you to just write one sentence in it. Or, I don't know, there's so much you can do.
And I really love this sequence, right? You read independently and then draw, highlight, write a summary. Then you share with a partner and then we are going to fill in the blanks. Then as a class, I'm going to project the reading. I'm going to read. I'm going to model the reading so you can hear me. And I'm going to stop and I'm going to do comprehension checks. And then we're going to cut this a page that has 4 paragraphs. We're going to cut each paragraph. You're going to select one random paragraph. You're going to draw it, and your friends, your group, the next group is going to decide which paragraph am I drawing. And then I can imagine that after you do that several times, you can say, now you are going to just go maybe with a partner and pick up a drawing and trying to retell what happened in the target language and see where we are. But it's so many opportunities. And here we are, teachers. If you're listening to that, this is one reading that you can take, and this reading, instead of being, okay, I read it, I understand, I understood, or whatever it is, and 5 minutes, 7 minutes, and you're like, they didn't read enough. You have them read at least 4 times with all these ideas. I love it.
Here's the next thing then. Once they feel comfortable with the text, and maybe this is, a day or 2 in, and I learned this from a teacher. His name is Keith Toda, Toda. He teaches Latin.
Yes.
He is amazing.
Yes.
Google Keith Toda. I got to see him speak in person, maybe at Skolt one year. But one of the things I learned from him, I would then project this reading and it's projected in the target language. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to read it aloud, translating it in English, okay? Or whatever, your home heart language is that your kids have. And I'm going to make mistakes. And the kids know this. So I might be reading it and saying Linda is a really popular tennis player. Well, she's not a tennis player. She's a soccer player. And when I make that mistake, the class is going to yell at me. You can choose the word. I had them yell tonta, like foolish, silly, like idiot, dumb. And there's nothing kids love more than calling their teacher dumb, and they will yell it. But now they have to listen. And as I have it projected, I had like my yardstick or a pointer or whatever. So I'm pointing along with the text. So they are looking at that text. They're seeing it in the target language. They're hearing it in their first language, or, whatever your teaching language is. And they are listening for that mistake. And so now they're seeing it and they're really thinking about the text, and they get to yell at you. And then you're like, oh, you're right. And sometimes I'd make a mistake like 3 times in a row or something, you read the room and you go with it.
Again, I love it. And then you are playing a game, you are having fun, you are reading again. And then every time that the students read more, guess what? They're going to get more input and they're going to feel more comfortable with that input. And we recorded this 2-part episode with Florencia Henshaw about output. And she just kept saying, we cannot forget that input precedes output. And we sometimes have our students to output the language before they're ready. And because we go too fast, we just want to cover. And then like, okay, next reading. You don't need the next reading. Stay with that reading a little bit longer. Okay, so our next one are okay, so this is like a matching activity. And this is like with information about women's soccer around the world, because they get some information. So it's like a trivia with matching the sentence. So match the first part of the sentence with the second part of the sentence. And I have 7. So it's kind of like a matching. How would you do this matching activity?
Yeah. So again, I worked at a one-to-one school. Kids spend a lot of time on screens. I loved hands-on activities. Anything where I could give them like actual pieces of paper they had to manipulate and move around a desk and pair up. And, my students, they loved this, whether they were freshmen, 14, or seniors who were 18. And so I'm looking at this page, the way Claudia has this one formatted. There's A, B, C, D, E, F, G at the top, and there's the first half of the sentence. And there's a line next to it where you can write your answer. And at the bottom, we've got 1 through 7 with like the end of the sentence. So again, if I have a class that they just can't handle it, I'm going to give it to them. They can just write it. That's fine. Like write the numbers. The way this is formatted, if let's say I have multiple preps, let's say I teach this class 3 times. That first prep, they're getting this paper and I'm saying, hey guys, I need you to cut these out because I'm not going to expect my time to cut out 24 copies of this when, my kids could do it. And it might take me 2 or 3 minutes in class in that one prep, but it's going to save me like 40 minutes. And I'm here for that. So I'm going to say, hey, cut these apart. And then I'm going to give each kid an envelope to put them in at the end. And now they can actually line stuff up next to each other and move papers around. Like, I don't think that one's right. I think it's this one. And so that's, the first thing my mind goes to is just every kid gets a set, or you have them work in partners and they're going to actually line up the 2 papers that go together. The other thing, so there's 14 pieces of paper in this one because we have 7 questions. So we got to match. So there's 14 strips of paper. The other thing I would probably do, let's say I had a class of 28 students, because that's math I can do and that works for this, right? In real world, we'd have to finagle it a little bit, pull some questions out. But maybe I have these cut apart and I'm going to walk around. I'm just going to randomly give each kid a slip of paper. And I'm going to say, okay, you either have a letter, that's the start of a sentence, or the number, and that's the end of the sentence. Walk around and find your partner. If you have the end of the sentence, if you have a number, you're looking for a letter. That is the first part. If you have a letter, you're looking for a number. And they walk around and they have to find their partner. And then I will be circulating as well as people pair up. I can check like, hey, high five. That's right. Great. Hang on to that, because I'm going to call you guys to like share this in a minute, And so now they're in partners, and now I can go around and again, I can just project it. And I can be like, hey, ¿quién tiene A? Who has A? Look at us reviewing the alphabet, right? And question words like who. So, hey, who has A? Who has A? And, they raise their hand, whatever. I pick somebody, or I'm like, come on, guys. I know somebody has A. Don't make me come look for you, whatever. And you find you're like, okay, hey, A, like, great, read out your sentence. Now your partner, read your sentence. And you can go through then and like say, yeah, that's right. Great. Um, I could also cut these apart, hang one half of the sentence on one side of the room, the other half
Love
of
that.
the sentence on the other half of the room. So they have to walk back and forth. Oh my God, my kids loved and hated me for this all at the same time. They're like, oh, so
And
much
that can
walking.
be a relay type of activity. So they
Yes.
can do it in groups. Oh my
You
God, they will
could
love
make
it.
this a competition, kind of like running dictation or whatever, and like, hey,
Yes.
meet, like, A goes and they have to meet in the middle, and like, hey, it's something about the first like women's football club was created in, because guess what? Now they've had to read it and interpret it. They can relay that in English. I'm fine with that. And
Mm-hmm.
now the other person is going to say, okay, so I'm looking for something probably with a, year or a
Mm-hmm.
place or whatever. And they're still having to interpret. You can do that. Now you're like, Lisa, there's 7 questions and I have 28, well, 7 questions. I have 21 students or something like that, right? Just print out 3 copies. 7
Mm-hmm.
times 3 is 21. Now every student has like a place to be. And if you need to, I can't remember, is this I was talking about it or is later on, but we'll talk about it now too, is you can just I color and symbol coded them. Oh, I already talked about this,
Yeah,
right?
you did.
Okay,
You
great.
did.
So you can do that again and say like, hey, you got to go find a triangle and hey, you're a triangle on the other side. And um, you can just make them walk around and find the answers.
I
And,
love that.
or you could
Mhm.
project the questions on the screen and have just the answers. Like it don't have to be hung on a wall. You can just set them down on desks around the room and be like, hey, walk around and
Oh
find
my
the answer
God, that
and
is so good.
write it on a piece of paper. And then we go through it and.
I have this game that is with questions. And what I do is I have these sets of questions and I create as many sets as groups. And then I give the set of questions to each group and I call on the answer. And the students have to look at their sets and see if they have the question to my answer. But the great thing is like when I call my answer, I do like a really, really long answer and nobody can move until I say, dale, like let's go. And so I just say the answer and say the answer, and I'm just like repeating and making sure that everybody understood my answer, which is more input. And then they're looking at their questions. And then when I say 1, 2, 3, the first one that brings me the question, the team gets a point. But here you can do the same. You can just have one part for you and then give the answers to each group. You call the first part of the sentence and your students have to listen and find out their second part, and whoever comes to you first brings it. And now you have a game. This is like, oh my gosh, you're gonna have to pause this episode so many times and take notes because there's so many great ideas. We're talking about one activity that have 7 questions where you split the sentence into 2 and they have to match the first part of the sentence with the second part of the sentence. Love all this idea. Okay, moving on to what happened first. So these are 5 questions and each question has A and B. So A and B are 2 events from the life of Linda Caicedo, and they have to decide for each number what happened first, A or B. So what else can we do just to give it to them and circle the A or B, or what else?
So again, we can give them the worksheet and like, hey, circle A or B, and great, that took 5 minutes. Well, crap, what do I do? And sometimes you need to do that, all right? Some days that's just what happens. Or some days I was running short on time and I had grand plans. Like, never mind, we're doing the short, fast version. It's fine. So again, with these, my first thought is I would number them like 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B. And then you can cut them apart or you can format them actually like in Microsoft Word or Google Docs. If you insert a table and you type the stuff into a table, it keeps it really nicely shaped. It's really easy way to make like cards that are all the same size that you can then cut out. So I would again be like, hey, decide A or B, like put that one on top. So again, hands-on manipulatives, they're actually moving around paper they can feel, right? Now, if you really, really plan ahead with how you pair up your things, okay, we've got 5 pairs of what happened first. So we've got 10 events from this story, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you really sort of like plan this out, and let's say number 1, the 2 events, they weren't like back-to-back events. They didn't happen one right after the other. Maybe they're like kind of different parts of the story. Once they've cut those all apart, or even if it's just on paper, you can say, hey guys, guess what? You've decided which of those 2 happened first, but now put all 10 of them in order. Okay. And this is what's great if it's actual paper. Again, they can move them around, put all 10 in order. Or they can kind of write it on another sheet of paper, like, okay, 1A happened first, and then it was 3B, and then it was 2A, and then it was 5A, and whatever. Put everything in order. The other thing you can have them do is you can say, hey, I also want you to translate it into English. Like just write, don't have to translate word for word, but just enough like, hey, I know that you know what this meant. Like one of them is, oh, she got bad news that her like possibilities of playing soccer were limited. So maybe there's like, I don't know, you just write bad news or sad face or whatever. So again, they can draw, they can write in English, and it's just another interpretive thing for them. It also makes it a little bit easier then when you ask them to order all 10 of them, for example. The other thing is you can just hang these pairs around the room instead of giving them to them. Just make them walk around and read the questions. I can't tell you how many times I just cut apart a worksheet I got from the textbook and hung it around the classroom in like seriously ugly strips of paper. And people freaking loved it. Like they thought it was the best. They got to get up. They got to move. Maybe we got to use a mini whiteboard. It's good stuff.
I love that. I love the gallery walk because that means that students are going to be like walking around and doing this. Now, when we're talking to Lisa about this, one of another idea was to give students a card, one with A and one with B. You're not giving the worksheet. They just only have their pair, and they have their pair up, and they have A and B. That's it. And then you read aloud the events, either A or B, and then the students have to put in front or in the back, depending on what is the correct order of the 2 events. So again, it's just kind of same activities. What happened first, and then multiple ways for you to use it, depending on your class, depending on your mood, depending on anything. Okay, let's move on. And the next one is opinions. Like when you have this opinion. So basically here we have, do you agree that there is a soccer school here that Linda wanted to go, but she couldn't because it was only for boys? So do you agree that this school is only for boys? And then you say, yes, I agree, or no, I don't agree. So it's like an opinion type of questions. And there are like 3 of them. What would you do with those?
So with opinion questions, there's like the classic kind of 4 corners, or like you might project a question. If you agree, move to this side of the room. If you disagree, move to this side of the room. Or you could like be in the middle if you're undecided. A variation of that is a game. I can't remember where I first heard this. I did not come up with this, but it's called like Get Off the Bus. And it's hard if you have a lot of students in a small room, but if you can get students to line up vertically, like little kids walking through a hallway, okay, one behind the other, and you project the question and you give them the options and you're like, okay, if it's yes, I agree, you're going to jump to the left. If it's no, I don't agree, you're going to jump to the right. But nobody moves until I tell you to. And then 1, 2, 3, like salta, jump, or whatever. And then students actually jump from one side or the other. You'll get varying levels of enthusiasm. Some will step, some of them will shake your floor if you're teaching a trailer like I did. But then they jump one side or the other based on their opinion. This is great because everyone moves at the same time. So you can't just go with the crowd. So that's kind of nice. Again, you can just hang these around the room and have people do tally marks or put their initials. You can do a live poll, a lot of different things. And when I did that, like Get Off the Bus where they would jump, I would then kind of randomly, I'd be like, oh, this is in the target language. Oh, this is interesting. 14 people jumped this way and 7 jumped that way. Look at us reviewing numbers. And then you might call on somebody and be like, hey, why? Or did you, depending on what the question is, or ask some kind of a follow-up question. Again, depending on the level of the students, things like that.
I really like that. And I also like when we put it around and then the tally, because it's really low stakes for the student. It's like, I don't want to be called on. I don't want to say my opinion aloud. And especially if you feel like there are going to be students who really don't want to speak up, really don't want anybody to know what they really think, like polling students is such a much better way. And then you can narrate, which I love, their answer, like, oh, wow, so most of my students think this. And then you can say why. And maybe you're going to have one student who is brave enough to give that follow-up answer. Or you can say, like Lisa suggested before, let's draw our why. So they can poll and then with a piece of paper, with a pencil, just draw the whys, and then you can narrate that. Love that. Okay, so that was an opinion question. So let's move to, I think the next one was true or false.
Oh yeah, good old true or false. So true or false, again, it can be kind of boring. Again, you can hand it to them and just have them, mark true or false, and that's fine. You can hang it around the room and just have the questions hanging around the room. You can, so this one's in a table. You can cut apart the questions and have them put them into piles, true or false. You can put them in groups, have them talk about it, and then have them come and be like, hey, you guys take number 1 and come stick it on the board under true or false. And they can come and stick it up there, and then you can kind of go through them as a class. You can do true or false with a thumbs up, thumbs down. You can do it electronically, polling people. It's just kind of all about thinking about different ways we can do some of this. And you'll notice if you've been taking notes, a lot of this is really repetitive. I'm hanging stuff around the room, or they're doing it on whiteboards, or they're drawing. But the important thing is that you mix and match. So we're mixing the states that our students are working in, whether they're looking and reading a paper on their own, whether they're talking to a partner, whether even just standing up or sitting down, or whether they're drawing, or whether they're walking and reading. As long as we can keep at least one thing novel, it doesn't matter if we only have 7 tricks in our bag, as long as we are thoughtful about how we rotate them. And you will be amazed at how an activity changes when it's just, hey, stand. I mean, I would tell students, go find a partner. I would say, you can stand, you can sit, you can do wall squats. I do not care. And just giving students that choice to do a worksheet standing up or sitting down, or trying to do wall squats and prove they're tough. Just that adds enough novelty to kind of keep them active and engaged.
I love that, what you said is exactly the same thing. If you notice, there are the same type of variation, and it's so important that you write them down and put them on your desk, right? Because you will forget, and then you're going to come back and then you say, oh my God, this is just a simple, boring, true or false question. What should I do? Now you have them written down, so you have more possibilities. Okay, the next one, we're almost done. The next one are comprehension questions. And I think we have 10 or 12.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm like, why am I going through this research? I found them. Yeah. So there's 12 of them here. So it's stuff like, hey, where is Linda from? What did Linda want to do as a kid? So we're asking comprehension questions. And again, we can give them a piece of paper, have them write it down. We could project them and have them write answers on mini whiteboards. Everyone turn it at the same time. Again, my favorite thing to do, cut a boring worksheet apart. I'm going to cut it apart. I'm going to give every kid a question. We can do this speed dating style, and we, check answers. We could do this where so again, I loved my mini whiteboards. I might give kids a strip of paper, say, hey, tape this to the top of the whiteboard, so it's kind of hanging over the top. So if I walk up to someone, they can read the question. There's a really good example of this on my blog, actually. But they'll see. So I'm now walking around talking to everyone in the class. I'm going to walk up to Claudia, and Claudia has question 7. And it's, what sickness did Linda have? That's number 6, whatever. So on my whiteboard or a piece of paper, I'm like 6, I'm going to write the answer to the question. And then I'm going to go find Laura and she's got question 4 and I'm going to write the answer to number 4. So now they're up, they're walking, they're maybe helping each other like, hey, what does your question mean? I don't know what that is. And then, oh, yeah, it's that part. Okay, I remember, it gives them an opportunity to help each other out, and there's movement, and maybe there's a whiteboard or they're using the whiteboard just as a hard surface to write on. You can do that. Again, hang them around the room, just have them walk around the room and answer them. That works as well.
The fact that you're putting the questions on a whiteboard is just a little tweak instead of hanging them around the room. So it's like, just because it's kind of like the same, right? Like you're gonna have to go and find the question and then answer. But in this case, you are turning up with, Lisa, and Lisa has number 7. And then Lisa says, ¿por qué era buena noticia para Linda jugar con el Real Madrid? Why it was a good news for Linda to play with the Real Madrid? And then like, oh, okay, so that's my 7. Now I'm going to answer. But I'm just having like this small interaction with Lisa, and Lisa can be my coach. Lisa can say, no es correcto. Like, like she can help me a little bit with the question, like just Lisa said. This is such a great different way to do simple comprehension checks.
And here's how you get, hang on, one more last thing. Here's how you get more mileage out of these questions. So they've walked around, they've answered all the questions, right? So like one of them is just, where is Linda from? So where there's 12 questions on this one, maybe you say, hey, students, now you got all the answers. We've gone through the answers as a class. Everyone's got the right thing. I want you to pick 5 of them and add another detail or something related. So like, where's Linda from? Okay, well, she's from Colombia. Maybe then I say, what city? Or maybe I say, maybe she moved somewhere and I say where? Or maybe I say when she was born, and just, they're not doing all 12. Choose 5 that are easy, you feel confident with, and add one more detail in the target language or not in the target language, depends on the kid. And sometimes it's like, hey, do it in the target language if you can. Or I would tell them like, do it in Spanglish. That's fine. Like do what you can, and then you can go through that as a class. I
love that. And I think that's another one that you can do when we're talking about the events. So really, when you put like what happened first, then you put them in order, then you have the 10 events, and then you can add an additional event and add it, and then give it to a team, and they have to place it in the right order because it's random. So, oh my gosh, those great ideas. This is so good. Okay, so the last one that we have in this particular resource, we have 2 sources of input. So the first one was a reading, and then I had an audio. So there were like 2 sources of input. And at the end, what I said is like, I created a list of 10 different facts, details, and the students have to decide if the details were in the audio, were in the text, or were in both, because both texts were coming from talking about Linda Caicedo. So of course it's a worksheet, and we have the 10 sentences, it's on a table, and then on front it says audio, texto, and they can check both if it's both. So what can we do with this?
So this is one where I would probably have them do it on their own for like 5 minutes. Then I'm going to partner them up or put them in a small group and kind of compare. And then this is one I probably would not have them cut apart. I would probably also have, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there's like 9 of them here. I would probably have like 9 index cards or larger pieces of paper that also had this. And I would maybe give 1 to each group and then have them come up and like tape it to the board under audio, text, or both. And a lot of times what I would do is I would actually project on my projectors went onto my wall, project a slide that said audio, text, or both, and have them just stick it like under that. And then we can kind of just go through those as a class. And so again, they're doing it on their own. They're comparing with a group and getting some reinforcement. And then we're going to go through it as a class, and someone's going to get to like stand up and come move, and we can move things around. You could also do this as a hands-on manipulative task. if we formatted it different and cut them apart, and they can actually like move stuff where it needs to go. I could then actually use probably these same like audio, text, these 9 things, and have them also put them in order or something like that. Or maybe I'm taking drawings that I've taken, kids' drawings that I've taken pictures of throughout the unit, and I'm going to project those and have them look and say, hey, which one does it go with? And, you know, they can just call it out. Again, we're going to recycle, we're going to repurpose these things over and over for, you know, multiple uses, so that I'm not creating new stuff every single time. I want to repurpose the same thing over and over again because it's easier for me and it's repetition for
I know.
students.
And I love it because is the fact that you have all these options when you have a simple activity allows you to feel super less stressed and then differentiate in your classes. Because sometimes we have the resource and the resource is great. We have a great story. We have great activities, but our classes need different things. So some classes in some days need movement, some classes need like quiet time, some classes need like group work, some classes are like stronger, and then you need to allow them, like you really need to promote that and take advantage of that. But you say, but it's the same 12 questions. Like, yes, they are, but the way that you use those 12 questions and your students to answer can be in so dramatic different ways. And the best part is super low prep on you. So let's check what the type of questions, the type of activities that we're talking today that you can repurpose in different ways. So we're talking about PQAs. We were talking about matching. We were talking about reading, how to read a text. We were talking about opinion, then multiple choice with what happened first, true or false. Then we have a comprehension questions. Then we have audio and text. Oh my God. Yes, and open-ended questions. This was so good, Lisa. I am like, I really feel like this is something that you need to save, take notes, and come back every day that you feel like, oh, I don't know what to do in my classes, because I'm sure that you already know what to do in your classes. Lisa, thank you so much. And, you know, your expertise is, of course, you, as you can see, Lisa is a wonderful Spanish teacher, amazing Spanish teacher, but now you're doing more organization and processes and systems. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now and where can people find you?
Yeah. So I, as a teacher, like really, I was not organized my first few years. It was a nightmare. I took like 5 years and I got a really good organizational system for my Google Drive and for my Dropbox. And digital organization is not a skill that most people get taught. And it's something a lot of people struggle with. So I spend my time now, I work with teachers, I work with online business owners, I work with just everyday people, teaching them how to declutter, create systems for, and maintain their digital spaces. Things like email, things like Google Drive, things like how to clear out your downloads folder that has 2,000 things in it when nothing should be in your downloads folder because it's a temporary holding space. I have a course to help teachers create unit hubs. So it's like your one-stop shop for everything that you need in a unit. So next year, when you come back to this unit, you're not like, what did I do? How many days did it take? What did I start with? What assessment did I use? Where is that? How did I group them? It is all there, like spelled out for you. And so that's what I do. And you can find me on Instagram more than I should be. I am Lisa J MCH there. You can find my organizing stuff at lisamch.com. And I actually still have my Spanish blog is still out there. It's lamaestramch.com. And that's where you can find kind of like, it's like this little time capsule of my time teaching and when I shared things about that.
Oh, Lisa, this was wonderful. This was amazing. I think you're going to really realize what we can do with one good activity, right? Like it's not like you need to spend hours and hours thinking about, oh, how can I engage more my students? I think Lisa gave you a ton of ideas. So let us know. I would love to hear if you use any of these activities. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook at Claudia M. Elliott. Tag me, send me an email. And again, I hope that you have a great rest of the week. Thank you, Lisa, again. And nos vemos pronto. Chao, chao.